What's up, everybody? I'm James,
I'm Crystal.
and this is Our Killer Obsession.
Today I'm bringing you the story of the disappearance of Theresa Ann Bier. This is a different story I'm bringing you today. A little bit of myth, folklore, plus true crime.
Yeah. I actually don't know pretty much anything about this one, but she did tell me that it's about Bigfoot. So I got my Bigfoot gear on for this one.
He's a big believer.
He's out there, man. He's out there.
Okay, so first, let me ask, is Bigfoot real?
I mean, come on, you guys. I'm sporting it. I'm letting it be known. I think he's out there somewhere.
I'm a no. But I'll pretend for him. All throughout history, there have been lots of stories about Bigfoot. Sightings, pictures, you've all seen the famous pictures. And Native American tribes have been telling tales for centuries about hair-covered giants that would kidnap people.
Mm-hmm.
And some tribes said that it was for mating purposes, and other tribes said that it was for meal purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So are these stories true? Are they fake? Are they folklore? You guys decide. I have two, actually.
I mean, nobody really knows, right? But I don't know. Maybe Bigfoot ain't so mean, unless you back him into a corner like any other wild animal.
You're
maybe
picturing like Harry and the Hendersons.
I mean, kind of, yeah, like
the
a big tall,
vegetarian,
nice Bigfoot that only gets angry if you make him angry.
I hope when we're in the Pacific Northwest, we meet Harry.
I hope so too,
and not one of these ones that I'm going to talk about right now. There are two stories that have come through history of people claiming to be kidnapped by Bigfoot. One of them is Albert Ostman. He claims to have been snatched up while dozing in his sleeping bag in the wilds of British Columbia in 1924. He says a male Sasquatch kept him captive for 6 days with a family of these creatures before he managed to escape.
Okay.
While not as well known as his story, there's another tale from a Native American, a Nootka Indian named Harry. Very similar story. He too claimed to have been grabbed up by a male Sasquatch, carried off to be presented to a large number of these animals in 1928. Harry claimed the Sasquatches lost interest in him after a while, and that was his opportunity to escape.
Okay.
Harry suspected he may have been taken as a potential meal.
Oh.
But Albert thought he was being presented to a female in the group as a possible mate.
Okay.
These are the only two stories, though, that I could actually find on Google. They're the most common ones I found. Everybody else, there's always the crazy stories out there of they saw Bigfoot in their backyard or whatever. But none of the kidnapping ones like we're going to get into right now. So that brings us to Theresa Ann Bier. Who was Theresa? Theresa was born on April 16th, 1971 to Shirley and David Bier in Fresno, California. Theresa's parents did not provide a safe and loving home for Theresa, though, or her siblings. Shirley was her mother, and she was particularly abusive to the children. When Theresa was 3 years old, she was severely injured and ended up in the hospital. Shirley had wrapped her leg around the crib slats and twisted it until it broke.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. She also beat Theresa, breaking several of her ribs. Eventually, social services stepped in and took her and her sisters away. And then her parents split up and went their separate ways. Theresa was placed in foster care, and Sylvia Pierce, a friend from church, ended up taking her and her sisters in. But a few years later, Theresa had been placed in the care of her father. He decided he wanted custody back. He was remarried to a woman named Margie Richmond, and Margie had previously been married to and had two of her own daughters, and they lived with her and David as well. Mm-hmm. So he was granted custody, got Theresa, and they moved to Southern California, and they worked as janitors. But Margie, the new stepmom, was reportedly very abusive to her daughters as well as Theresa. It's said she would lock the refrigerator and not let the kids eat, but eat meals in front of them.
Oh, that's terrible.
Mm-hmm. Theresa would eventually return to Fresno to her great-grandmother's house. But living with your great-grandmother as a kid is probably really rough. Great-grandma can't keep up with the little kids.
Yep.
So soon, Theresa's uncle, John Blind Johnny Richmond, who was also her stepmom Margie's ex-husband.
Okay.
Yep,
All right.
Yep. He was granted custody. He was a 42-year-old man who claimed to have lost his eyesight while playing Russian roulette, although some people think he was a bit of a fibber and could still see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. He was a bit of a BSer, it sounds like.
Gotcha. Yep.
His daughters lived with Margie, like we had said before, but he also had 2 sons he had with a prostitute. He had custody of those sons.
Holy cow! Blind Johnny here sounds like a real winner.
He is they all sound like real winners.
Wow.
Yeah. He also had a 17-year-old girlfriend named Tamara.
Oh, it just gets worse.
Who lived with him, right? Yep. John, Blind Johnny, would often make Theresa miss school in order to babysit his sons. And it's claimed that he lent her out to his friends to be abused.
Horrible.
So she really had a rough life growing up.
Yeah, from the beginning, man. She hasn't caught a break.
No, nobody really cared for her and took her in. At 16 years old, Theresa was described as a slow learner and immature at school. That makes a lot of sense, though, from where she's coming from.
Yeah,
She didn't have the
absolutely.
tender loving care of anybody to show her the way of life
Right.
and to
And
really
then
take an interest in her.
Yeah, I'm sure she was kind of left to fend for herself too, education-wise, at home. If whatever the schools or whatever wasn't teaching her, I'm sure she wasn't getting any
No.
extra at home.
Right. This brings us to early June 1987. Theresa told her friends Peggy and Janice that she was going to the mountains with a man she had recently met and told them she was going to miss school for the trip. The man was a 43-year-old named Russell Welch, or Skip. He was a house painter who was obsessed with Bigfoot, also known as Sasquatch, and he claimed to have seen it many times. Skip was a friend of Blind Johnny.
Okay.
So why is a 16-year-old girl headed to the mountains with a 43-year-old man?
I mean, there's the big question, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Blind Johnny's like, sure.
Right. Well, that
yeah.
goes back to what they accused Blind Johnny of doing, and so yeah.
Yep. So the Skip fellow lived mostly off of disability checks, and he was addicted to meth, and his wife Shannon had died recently of a drug overdose. On the morning of June 1st, 1987, Skip arrived at Blind Johnny's house saying he was there to take Theresa to school. That was a lie. Theresa had already planned to spend the day in the mountains with Skip. So later that morning, Blind Johnny received a call from Central High School wanting to know why Theresa hadn't arrived at school that day. He told them she was homesick. Then he spent the day searching for her. So he never actually told them, like, well, I didn't know she was missing.
Right. Yeah. He just kind of covered and was like, "Oh, I'm going to figure this out."
Right. So he started asking around, asking their friends, and despite none of them knowing where she was, many of them did warn him that Skip was a bad guy and not trustworthy. That evening, around 9:30 p.m., Blind Johnny reported Theresa missing finally to the Fresno police. Before they headed to the mountains, Skip and Theresa made a stop at Skip's daughter, Chandra's house. Skip was having trouble with his beat-up 1976 Monte Carlo and needed to work on it before they headed to the mountains. Skip and Theresa had made it to the Sierra Nevada mountain range near the Shut-Eye Peak area. The Fresno police spoke to Skip's friends and family, one of them being 17-year-old Michelle Ryan. She had been enticed to the mountains by Skip during the previous summer, so this sounds like his MO.
Yep.
Because even Skip's daughter, Chandra, had advised against her going. She knew her father had a habit of enticing young girls to the mountains with drugs and then luring them to have sex.
That's horrible. That's so terrible.
So he was doing the same thing to Theresa, it sounds like. Police also spoke to Skip's daughter and son. Chandra had been visited by her father and Theresa on the day of her disappearance. Terry had also been visited by Skip and a young girl, presumably Theresa, on the same day, but they couldn't be located. So they're both missing right now. On June 5th, 1987, a police officer spotted Skip's brown 1976 Chevy Monte Carlo by a trailer park near North Fork, a town in the foothills of the mountains. It would later be explained that Skip had come down the mountain to visit a friend, Dorothy Davis. He was very upset and told her about this young girl he had taken to the mountains, and she was taken by a satanic group and being kept in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Davis assumed Skip was high and all hallucinating and delusional, and she didn't really believe what he had said. A few days after Theresa was reported missing, Blind Johnny was receiving threatening phone calls from a young female. She told him that Skip was packing a pistol and wanted her to tell him, if you continue to make trouble for him, you will have more trouble from him. Even your kids can get hurt. And tell the police that Skip had taken Theresa to school, dropped her off, and some unknown blonde girl had picked her up.
Okay.
Right. That doesn't match the satanic group that stole her at all.
Right.
So now he's just making up stories, and he doesn't want the family to pursue looking for her. 5 days later, authorities were able to find Skip at his mother's house in Sunnyside, Fresno. He was arrested for a previous drunk driving violation. During questioning, Skip spoke very seriously about Bigfoot and claimed that there was a very large number of them living in the mountains, in underground caves, and he had communicated with them several times.
Okay.
But he's also a meth addict.
Right. Now, I may believe in an occasional, sighting or something, but hanging out with them, I don't know if I'll go that far.
When questioned about Theresa, his story changed several times, and he insisted on calling her by a nickname that he gave her, and he would only call her Sam.
Okay, that's weird.
That is very weird. At first, he claimed he had dropped her off at school, but soon admitted that the two did in fact go to the mountains to seek out Bigfoot. Then, Skip claimed that Sam had run off into the woods with another young woman, and then later claimed she had left with some other campers. And in yet another version, he said that Sam had gotten overexcited after seeing Bigfoot a couple times that day, and then went running after the creature again, and he was never able to find her.
Okay. Okay.
Satanic group.
Yep.
Random blonde girl.
Yep.
A random woman in the woods.
Uh-huh.
And now Bigfoot. Skip said that Theresa would not be returning because she'd be happier with the Bigfoot community in the mountains rather than her own home.
Nah, none of that sound right at all.
No. At one point, during the police interviews, Skip, without officers asking anything, said that if they did happen to find Theresa, there would be no sign of sexual abuse. That's a very random thing to say.
Very specific and weird and random statement to make.
He also claimed that although Theresa had been willing to have a sexual relationship with him, he would never have done that with a young girl. That wasn't in his nature.
Okay, man.
Which we already know that's not true.
Yeah.
His daughter tattled on him.
Right.
And said that's actually his exact nature. Skip agreed to show authorities where the campsite that he and Theresa allegedly stayed at. He led them to a small grove of trees at a meadow's edge along Browns Creek. At the inner area of the grove, there was a smoldering fire among the heavy layer of pine needles that appeared to be somewhat damp. The smoldering burnt area was approximately 3.5 feet wide by 8 feet long. That's a pretty big fire.
That's a random style of a fire.
Yeah, a big rectangle fire, huge fire.
Yeah.
There were these blankets that were put up, and they were in a certain formation, and there was a camera, a purse, and an off-white bra and a t-shirt. Pictures of the countryside, along with a picture of Welch playing the guitar as he was sitting by what appeared to be a blanket that was also in the grove area. There were also pictures of Theresa. So a lot of weird random articles to make it look like that's where they were. The campsite where all this was found turned out to be staged by Skip. So it wasn't even the real location.
Oh, man.
From the actual photos of Theresa and the photos of him, the local deputies were able to guess that the actual camp was 20 miles away, possibly in Ghost Canyon. Even though he allegedly lied about the campsite, both the meadow and the canyon were searched. So they searched all the areas they thought.
Okay.
A helicopter that was searching for any clue or sign of Theresa's whereabouts spotted something on the hillside above the Brown Creek camp. Turned out to be a blue shirt that belonged to Skip, and it had meth in the pocket.
Oh.
Searches by bloodhounds were done in the vicinity of the camp, and the dogs detected Theresa's scent at one point, but no other clues were ever found. Skip was charged with child endangerment and child stealing. He was arraigned and released on his own recognizance by the Judge Gallagher. However, this judge did not realize that another judge had increased Skip's bail to $30,000 after reviewing the case.
Wow.
So 2 days later, Skip had to be rearrested.
All right. Well, I mean, at least they got him and he didn't take off.
Right.
Which I find it really weird. You can get charged with child stealing, which is kidnapping, right? And then get out.
On your own recognizance?
I mean, how's that even possible? You stole a child.
Right. But they have no evidence. They have nothing to prove anything.
Wow.
So 3 days before Skip's trial, authorities dropped the child stealing charge. They had offered to recommend a 1-year sentence if Skip signed a waiver allowing them to go forward with murder charges if Theresa's body were located, but Skip refused. The prosecution decided to drop the case to avoid double jeopardy if they did charge him later.
Okay.
So there was
so,
never any charges against Skip.
Right. Because I guess that makes sense. You don't have sufficient evidence, so you don't want to go through with the trial, then have him found not guilty, and then come up with something huge later, and then you can't do nothing with it.
Right. So Theresa Ann Bier has never been found.
Oh, my goodness.
No trace of her.
Wow.
So what happened to her? What out of the 5 stories were true, if any of them, or was it just Skip? Was he just a murderer?
Oh, man. I think that's probably the most likely cause, right?
I mean, obviously, common sense says that's what it would have to be.
Yeah.
But where is she? They never found any blood. They never found any part of her ever.
Yeah. That's hard to do as disappear a person and have no trace be found of them, especially for what sounds like a druggie. You know what I'm saying? Who's probably scattered-brained and
well, and he sounds like a predator.
Uh-huh.
He's been known to take these girls up to the mountains, and the Sierra Nevada mountains are huge.
Oh man, yeah.
So
massive.
I mean, there you can't. I mean, I would imagine, especially back then, you can't really search the whole area to really know.
Right.
It'd be a needle in a haystack situation.
It really would, unless you can pinpoint exactly and know exactly. Unless he's like, yes, this is exactly where everything is, and she's probably over there. You're gonna have a hard time tracking anything down in the mountains.
Yeah. So, was it Bigfoot?
Oh man, I don't know. You know, like I don't think my Bigfoot is a child stealer, but I guess if
but the stories from the early 1900s and the Native Americans say Bigfoot is a kidnapper.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, what if...
And we've heard other stories of Bigfoot being in the Sierra Nevada mountains.
Yeah. Or what if, let's just say, what if he was high? What if they're doing drugs and she got drug off by a bear?
That is very likely.
And consumed, and then that would explain no trace, because that bear can take an animal miles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess that's a possibility.
Or a big cat.
And
we've heard of that too before.
Yeah.
Yeah, big cats taking people out.
And, you know, if you're high on drugs, you might think what you're seeing is Bigfoot.
True. So most people believe that Skip was guilty of killing Theresa and disposing of her body. That's what I also believe. I don't believe Bigfoot theory is a thing.
Right. No.
However, there is a theory put forward by Skip's family that the speed freak killers abducted and killed her. And there was a group of meth addict biker gang type satanic group that were running in the Sierra Nevada mountains around the same time.
Oh, that's weird. That's so crazy.
I know. I had to look it up. We'll have to do a story on that too at some point.
So I guess that is a possibility. So that one story might have some weight to it, that she got taken by a satanic cult.
Yeah.
Oof. I think regardless, obviously he had something to do with it.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Definitely not Bigfoot, but it's just a very strange case and a strange way of trying to get out of murder.
It really is. And I mean, let's be real. Those are all like, how do you say, like, I don't know, what needle in the haystack type scenarios to happen. You know, the more likely causes this guy murdered this child. So
yeah. So the Speed Freak Killers is a name given to serial killer duo Lauren Herzog and Wesley Shermantine, together convicted of 4 murders, 3 jointly, and suspected in the deaths of as many as 72 people in San Joaquin County, California.
Wow.
So that's who they tried to blame it on.
Wow.
And despite Chandra admitting her father was a predator at the time of Theresa's disappearance, she defended him after his arrest.
Really?
Claiming that her father's only crime was practicing poor judgment by taking the young girl to the Sierra Nevadas. Blind Johnny died of cancer around 2008, and Skip died in 1998 at the age of 54 due to coronary artery disease.
Wow.
Yep, so we'll never know.
We will never know. Holy cow. Unless a needle in the haystack is stumbled upon by some random person, you know, maybe they find a bone fragment or something in the woods and you can...
Right. But it's been so long ago, too, and there's been so many wildfires in the Sierra Nevadas. I can't imagine anything would be left.
That's very true. Didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this will probably be one of the ones that'll never be...
Never solved.
Solved, and just always have to be a mysterious case.
Unfortunately.
Holy cow.
So the verdict is not Bigfoot. Just a creepy meth pedo.
No. Yeah. I find it interesting too that the daughter's like, well, he may be a lot of things and a sicko, but he's not a murderer. So,
right.
You know, I don't know. I think if you're able to do one, you might just be willing and able to do the next.
But we've seen another father-daughter duo in The Toy Box Killer.
That's
At first,
true.
she tried to turn her father in and then change her story and became an accomplice.
That's true.
You can check that story out too.
And then some children might just be oblivious to,
What
any
their parents are
wrongdoing
doing.
their parents could be doing. So.
That's true. They love them unconditionally.
Yeah, but I don't think Bigfoot had anything to do with this case. And
You're going to defend Harry to the end.
I am. I'm sticking with him. Yeah, so,
Me too. Harry's innocent.
yeah, I think this sicko is where he needs to be now. So
Definitely. And that is the crazy story of the disappearance of Theresa Ann Bier. We thank you guys for watching.
yeah, please hit that like and subscribe button if you liked our content, and we hope to see you next time.
Definitely.